Hi, good morning. I'm Carolina.
And I'm Annalisa.
And we'd like to welcome you to the very first episode of The Real Place.
Yes, The Real Place. It's a brand new podcast, first of its kind, and a global exclusive. And it's filmed entirely inside the Gemba virtual reality workplace.
For each episode, we send an Oculus Quest wireless VR headset to our guest, wherever they are in the world. And then me and Annalisa put on our quests and jump into the virtual world to meet and interview them. We choose true experts, visionaries who've been there, done that, and have the scars to prove it. And the premise of the podcast is that each one of them gives us just one prediction for the future. And we use the Gemba virtual workplace to explain their rationale.
It could be a prediction on how we're going to work, how a specific industry is going to change, or it could be very focused on one company, one challenge, or even one individual. Either way, the aim is to go beyond buzzwords and really get to grips with the changes in business and society that are coming our way.
And I'm sure you've read countless articles during lockdown about how this or that is going to change. Well, what we want to know is how those at the forefront of the world's top brands think and act, critically peeling back those layers to understand how we can be doing things better to progress and create positive change.
That leads us on nicely to today's episode and our very first guest. The word innovation is used so much in business. Very few people, really know what it means, and even fewer know how to be innovative in their work and daily lives. Today, Duncan Wardle, former head of innovation and creativity at Disney, will be joining us in The Real Place to give us a deeper insight on the mindset necessary to harness creativity in the post-pandemic world.
And just before we jump in, make sure to stick around until the end of the episode as we ask our guests to nominate a colleague, partner, or a rival to join us in The Real Place next time. So stay tuned for that and enjoy the episode. So Duncan, welcome to The Real Place. You're our first official guest. Welcome. Here's Annalisa, my co-host, and we're going to be talking about where the future will take us today.
Well, what an honor. I don't know if you can see me smiling, but what an honor. I mean, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I feel like Peter Pan.
Duncan, you've headed up innovation at Disney for 10 years. You've seen it through, massive changes from analog to digital over 30 years that you were there. You speak at about 130 events a year, is it, on how to innovate. What we want to know is, what do you think the future will look like?
Well, the future is anybody's game. I think the future is virtual. I read a book by Ray Bradbury called The Illustrated Man when I was at school. So we're talking the early 70s. There is a chapter within the book of The Illustrated Man where man had evolved to one finger, almost like George Jetson, because that's all man needed now. And yet here we are. We have no legs. So we're on our way already. Virtual was coming anyway, but it was kind of coming slow and clunky, and people were resisting it. I'd been on 2 Zoom meetings in the last 3 years. In the last 30 days, I've been on 3 Zoom meetings a day. And so I think the pandemic has accelerated that. I think we won't necessarily go to, Twitter has already announced that nobody will go back to their office. A lot of, as the corporate companies realize that their legal team, their IT team, their marketing can work from home, they will save money on corporate real estate. But the challenge that we've all found, certainly the challenge I found in Zoom, and actually trying to do virtual ideation sessions at Disney where we would have Imagineers in Shanghai, we might be in Los Angeles, was you were never in the room. And so as much as you wanted it to work, people were always left behind because they were on the screen, or you felt guilty that you'd forgotten them, so you weren't focused on the work at hand. And yet now here we are all in the room together. I think it's remarkable. I could see this for meetings in corporate in less than 12 months, quite frankly, because I would love to run a brainstorm with this. It would be amazing.
for a lot of people, the pandemic has brought a lot of fear and uncertainty. If you don't mind sharing, can you let us know how has this period affected you and your life?
Well, 4 years ago, I had worked for the Walt Disney Company for 30 years, and I was given the bronze Jiminy Cricket. Thank you for 30 magical years of service. And as I looked at the statue, I should have felt grateful, but all I could think of was mortality. All I could think of was, wow, I'm well over halfway here. Luck would have it, I got my update on my life insurance policy in the mail that week, which had estimated you're out at 74, and you think, oh wow, okay, well, I'm 55, so that's less than 20 years, and suddenly this enormous sense of mortality strikes, and so I thought, gosh, what can I do? I've been very lucky in life. I've worked for the most incredible company for 30 years. I've sent my son's Buzz Lightyear into space. I've built a swimming pool down Main Street, USA for Michael Phelps to swim down. I've done Super Bowl halftime shows. I've helped design theme parks and movies. Now it's my turn to give back. And so I stepped off a cliff. I was absolutely terrified. I had 2 kids in out-of-state tuition, which is not cheap. I had a mortgage to pay. And I just said, you know what? I want to give back. But I also noticed there's this gap. We all talk innovation. We all talk the need to take risks and think differently, but none of us are showing people how. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to show people how. I'm going to create a toolkit that makes innovation easy, creativity tangible, and the process fun. And in the last year I went to 132 cities. And I'd say, I think 10% of them I did for free because I wanted to. I love the workshops where you get in a room full of people who've been told for 5 years, 30 years, you're not creative. And you see a smile on their face at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when they think, I can do this. I take enormous pride away from that. And so now, 90 days ago, I was running around the world giving talks and workshops, and I've had to reinvent myself again. Because I don't believe I will be attending a live conference anytime in the next 18 months. By then, habits will change. For example, I don't believe, as sad as this makes me, I don't believe we shake hands with another human being again as long as we live. Why do I believe that? Because shaking hands is a habit. And if you don't do it for 2 years, the habit will be broken. So we've all gone to live conferences, but now the habit will be broken. As the industry comes back, and it will, I would estimate at least 25% of it will start virtual. But virtual through lots of platforms doesn't bring me into the same room. And so it's just a different emotional level. Here's Carolina, here's Annalisa, not in the same country currently as me, but here we are having a conversation. And I just think it's this ability to reinvent yourself. But here's the thing. You don't have to be frightened. Lots of people are going to get laid off in the next few weeks. Lots of people will be furloughed and they'll be frightened. If you do what you love, you'll be really good at it. I don't do math. I wasn't in the finance team. The only A I ever got in math was absent because I didn't show up for the exam. I love helping people think differently and have big ideas, and I'm really good at it.
Well, it actually leads us perfectly to the second room we're about to visit, which we have built especially for you. Shout out to Frankie, who has spent day and night making this happen for us. But, you opened Disneyland Paris in 1992, Disneyland in Hong Kong about 10 years later. I mean, you got Disneyland a star on a Hollywood Walk of Fame. So this is, I think, incredible that we were able to bring a little bit of your heritage to VR with us today. And you are sort of a master of analogy. I've listened to your talks, and I think you can really help our listeners explain what more established businesses who are actually looking at more innovative business models can learn what you know about theme parks.
Well, I think it's, look, the future is amazing. I mean, even recently you saw, I think it was, I can't remember which theme park, started to use augmented reality. And what they did was you could come into the park for the day and they mixed VR with AR. So yes, you could put a headset on. I think it's Six Flags experimented with it. And so they had one ride system where it could be this particular theme today, but it could be a different theme tomorrow, but it was still the same physical structure. Then they used augmented reality. They did essentially a Pokemon Go scavenger hunt throughout the park. You could join teams. So Carolina, right now you're on the blue team. Annalisa, you're on the green team. And so, and at the end of and you could collect virtual points as you went along on challenges. And then at the end of the day, let's say the green team had won. Congratulations, Annalisa. And then Annalisa, she got the fireworks show. But now think about technology, to think about drones today versus fireworks. Think about the amount of money that Disney alone spends on its fireworks every night, just at the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. But now think about, when I throw my product up in the air, I blow it up. So it's causing noise pollution, it's including actual pollution. But now think about what drones could do. Drones are, in effect, miniature fireworks. So I could now do a fireworks show in the sky where my capital investment, actually, I can bring it back down at the end of the show and use it again tomorrow. I can completely program it in the sky. There's no noise pollution. There's no actual pollution. And if I want to say, happy birthday, Annalisa, in the middle of the sky and fireworks, I can. And so the technology and where it's going to take us is amazing. And this is something that, yes, I thought about it, but I hadn't seen it. I mean, there is Avatar up there on my left-hand side. It looks just like the Avatar rock from Disney's Animal Kingdom and from the film Avatar. Now we can place people. People say, is technology going to kill creativity? Are you kidding me? Look at it. Think about how creative we could be now. I mean, if I could have a brainstorm in the middle of Avatar, and actually conduct the brainstorm in the middle of Avatar, about the different ideas we would have versus sitting in a boardroom.
You actually mentioned quite a lot this thing called river of thinking, which I really love. And I think this is a really powerful concept that, a lot of executives we work with could actually learn from. So I'd love for you to sort of use that as an example of, as we talk about this, the businesses that are facing all these challenges today, how could they use their creativity in different ways?
So yes, your river of thinking is your own expertise and your own experience. It doesn't matter what industry you work in. If you're in the legal profession, the IT profession, the marketing profession, the more experience, the more expertise you get in that particular profession, the better you are at it. But you jump into what I call your river of thinking, which is in fact the biggest barrier to innovation. I worked at Disney for some 30 years. My river of thinking on Disney is very wide, very deep, and very fast flowing. But we're being asked to get out of our river of thinking more and more often and disrupt quicker and quicker and quicker because of the level of disruption that's coming into the marketplace now more than ever. But it's very hard to stop thinking the way we always do. And so actually we'll start with the theme park example. There's an incredible tool that Walt used, Walt Disney, when he created Fantasia in 1940. He wanted it to mist inside the theater during the sequence with rain. He wanted heat pumped into the theater during the sequence with fire. And the theater owner said, no, Walt, too expensive. We could never do that. So Walt created this tool. I call it What If. You list the rules of your challenge as quickly as you can. So Walt listed the rules of going to a movie. You have to sit down. You have to go at a set time. I only watch one movie at a time. It's dark. Walt, can't control the environment. And he asked, what if I could control the environment? Well, that was not provocative enough. The more provocative your what if question, the further out of your river of thinking you will get. So Walt said, what if I take my movies out of the theater? Well, if I take my movies out of the theater, how would I do that? Well, wait a minute, they couldn't be two-dimensional because they'd fall down. What if I made them three-dimensional? Well, if I made them three-dimensional, I'd have to have people play the characters. If I have people play the characters, they'd need to wear a costume. Well, I can't have Cinderella stand next to Jack Sparrow or Davy Crockett because people wouldn't be immersed in her story. So I'd have to put her in a different oh, wait a minute, I'll call it Disneyland. This is an incredible tool. For example, with Netflix, the founder of Netflix listed the rules of going to Blockbuster Video because he, like you, was very frustrated with paying late fees. So he listed the rules. I must drive to a physical store. I can only go at a set time. I can only get 3 movies at a time. I never get the one I want on opening day weekend. So he took one rule and he said, what if I don't have to drive to what if there was no physical store? The more absurd and the more bizarre your question, the further out of your river of thinking you will get. He said, well, wait a minute. If there's no physical store, how do I make this work? Well, wait a minute, YouTube already exists. Well, in YouTube, they only stream amateur content. What if I just stream professional content? Nobody would have to drive anyway. I'll be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nobody would have to be kind of rewind. I'll cut the rental off at the end of 24 hours, so nobody pays a late fee. I know I'll call it Netflix. I'll take my idea to Blockbuster 5 times. They'll turn me down 5 times, and I'll take them out of business in less than 5 years. Walt, as you mentioned earlier on, created it when he created Disneyland, which I see before me. On July 17th, 1955, he said, we will not have any customers in our park. We will only have guests. We will not have any employees. We'll only have cast members. Cast for a role in the show. They'll wear a costume, not a uniform. They'll work on stage, not back. And with that one simple re-expression, created a level of hospitality that's never been replicated or duplicated. Fast forward, if people say, well, how does that work in business terms? In 2011, if we said, how might we make more money? We could have put the gate price up at Disney and we'd have made our quarterly results. That's iteration, not innovation. So we re-expressed the challenge. And instead of saying, how might we make more money? We said, how might we solve the biggest consumer pain point? So we asked the question, what if there were no lines? And we said, well, wait a minute, what if we eliminated the 27 front desks in our hotels, the turnstiles at the front of the what if we eliminated lines for rides and to pay? We didn't know how to do it. And we looked around the world, and sure enough, we found RFID technology. Now, when you visit the Walt Disney World Resort on holiday, you get a little plastic band on your wrist. It's called Disney's Magic Band. And it is your room key. You don't check in or out of the hotel anymore. It's your theme park ticket. You swipe and go. For my favorite rides, let's say I want to go on the Ferris wheel, I want to go on Pirates of the Caribbean, I want to go on It's Small World, the reservations are on my Magic Band. I swipe and go. I don't wait. If I want to take an item of merchandise and pay for it, I touch it once, it goes to my hotel room. If I touch it twice, it goes to my house. I save my food on my smartphone. I've got my hot dog with my pickles on the side. I'm going to Pinocchio's Village House for lunch today. As I walk into the restaurant knows I'm here. I touch table 47. The food comes fresh to me. Had we have said, how might we make more money? We'd have put our gate price up by 3% and met our quarterly results. But by turning the challenge on its head and saying, how might we solve the biggest consumer pain point? The average guest at Walt Disney World today has between 90 and 120 minutes free time a day. They didn't have 4 years ago. What has that resulted in? Record guest satisfaction, record intent to recommend, record revenues on food and beverage and merchandise, and data that you wouldn't believe of the tens of millions of people coming through the gates every year, effectively live crowdsourcing the future design of every product and service Disney creates by telling them what they like and what they don't. So that's just another tool that people can use.
Incredible. I also wanted to ask you, and I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but what is it that makes you sort of so unique in your thinking? How do you come up with these ideas? You know, you've sent Buzz Lightyear into space. You've done some incredible things. How do you just wake up and do that? Like, what's your secret that our listeners can learn from?
There are certain skill sets that children have that we lose as we grow up. You were born a very creative person. You were given a giant present for Christmas or your birthday. It came in a huge box. It took you ages to get that gift out of the box. And what did you spend the next 4 or 5 days playing with? The box. Why did you play with the box and not the toy? Because the box was your castle. It was your fort. It was your rocket ship. It's whatever you wanted it to be. Children are very curious. They ask why, and why again. What they're doing is they're getting to the insight for innovation. We go to school and get a job and we're told there's only one right answer. So we stop looking for that second why. But let me give you an example. When you're looking for an insight for innovation, act childlike, not childish. If I ask you, why do you go to Disney? You'll tell me I go for the rides. Well, that tells me, and your data sometimes only goes that deep, it tells me to invest in a capital investment strategy of a new attraction. But if I pause for a moment and ask you, well, why do you go for the rides? Well, I remember It's a Small World. Why is that important to you? Well, I remember the music. Well, why is that significant? It reminds me of my mother. Why is that significant to you? I take my daughter now on the fifth why you got to the insight for innovation. She's not going for a new capital investment strategy and a new ride. She's going for her personal memory and nostalgia. That's a communication campaign. Children are very creative. They're very curious. They use their intuition a lot. We have 100 billion neurons in our first brain and 100 million neurons in our second brain, our stomach. We make most of our decisions every day based on intuition. We're also born with an amazing imagination. And so simply by using those skill sets, children think very expansively. Everything is possible. The older and more experience we get, the more reductive we think. So I tend to behave, for want of a better expression, childlike. And that's what enables me to use curiosity, imagination, creativity, and intuition. The reason that I think these are very powerful skill sets is in the next decade, they say by 2030, artificial intelligence will eliminate 20% of the jobs that we do today. How will we compete with robots that think thousands of times faster than us by 2030? There are certain skill sets. I've worked with 2 or 3 AI experts in the last few years, and I've asked them, do you believe we could program the innate core skills that we're born with as children, creativity, imagination, intuition, and curiosity? And the answer is no, they don't believe that will happen in the next decade. Therefore, the most employable skill sets for the next decade, and you can see it already, are the ones we're actually born with. It's just time to bring them back out of the cupboard again.
That really resonated with me. As a mother, my son is 21 now, so I guess he's not a child anymore, but he still acts very childlike as far as I'm concerned. But I think in business, what you struggle with the most is really the day-to-day grind. You kind of forced to look at the reality
And I'm going to ask you a question. Keep your eyes closed. Tell me, where are you and what are you doing when you get your best ideas?
About to fall asleep.
About to fall asleep? Anna?
I would say when I'm exactly the same, when I'm either waking up or I'm about to go to sleep.
Okay. So what you'll hear, you can open your eyes. You'll hear people say in the shower, jogging, commuting, walking, driving, playing, falling asleep, waking up. The only two words you never hear anybody say is at work. Well, that's annoying, isn't it? Because you're paid to have
Hell
big
no.
ideas at work. So now, close your eyes again, and close your eyes again, and picture that last verbal argument that you had with somebody where you were shouting at each other. Tell me when you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you don't have to tell me about it. Just open your eyes. Now, the argument's over. You're angry at Fred. Fred, you son of a bitch. You blind copied my boss on that email. I'll never work with you again. You storm out of the office. You're furious at Fred. You go over to your local coffee shop. You get a cappuccino. You sit down. It's about 5 minutes after the argument's over now. You're beginning to relax. And what just popped into your head? 5 minutes after the argument was over.
Yeah.
That line, the killer one-liner, that one perfect line. Well, if I'd have said that, the perfect line. Did we ever deliver the perfect line during the argument? No. Why?
Yeah.
When you're in an argument, your brain is very busy. It's defending itself constantly. And the door between your conscious and subconscious brain is firmly closed. But the moment you step away from that argument or step into the shower, fall asleep or wake up, the door opens just wide enough and you come up with the killer one-liner or the big idea. Why is that important? Because when you're in the office, you're in busy beta, I call it. It's the same as being in an argument. And we hear ourselves say, I don't have time to think. The number one barrier to innovation. So how do you get into that brain state? Believe it or not, 87% of your brain is subconscious. Only 13% is conscious. And so when the door between your conscious and subconscious brain is firmly closed, I call it a door because people can remember it's a reticular activating system. When you're busy and stressed at work, that door is closed. Which is why you never hear people say, I have my best idea at work. But the moment they step into the shower, boom, that door opens just wide enough because they're being playful and they're given time to think. And the door opens to the other 87% of your brain where all that stimulus is there to help you solve the challenge.
If I'm sitting in an office and I have a big deadline and I really need to bring it home, what do I do?
So we run Energizers. When I was at Disney, we run Energizer. Why do you run an Energizer? An Energizer is a fun activity. It lasts for 60 seconds. It's just designed to hear laughter. Once I hear laughter, I know I've opened that door between your conscious and subconscious brain. So for those of you who said falling asleep or waking up, there's an experiment with actually putting beds into offices. But more realistically, there's an expression called when the penny drops. It came from Thomas Edison. When he would fall asleep at night, he'd put a penny between his knees, a tin tray on the floor. As he would fall asleep, the muscles would relax, the penny would drop, and it would make a noise and it would wake him up. And he would write down whatever he was thinking. If you're one of those people who gets their best ideas when you're about to fall asleep or wake up, keep a notepad by the bed because you promise yourself you won't forget the ideas by 7 o'clock in the morning, but we all know you do. And so when you are trying to have big ideas at work on demand, you need to be playful like a child because what you're doing when you're playful is opening that door between your conscious and subconscious brain. So I run an Energizer, which is a 60-second exercise just designed to get people to laugh.
That's awesome. That. We'll use that next time.
Definitely. Love that so much.
So I'd like to try one other tool with you. Can we go over to the whiteboard?
Sure.
Yes, of course.
Brilliant. Okay, great. Let's go over there. Okay. I'm going to come just to where Annalisa is, I hope.
Yes, come next to me. It's okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about social distancing in the real place.
Okay, so here's another tool you can consider bringing into your innovation sessions. I call it the naive expert. What is the role of the naive expert and why do you invite them in? I invite them in because they don't think like me. I have picked somebody from a different industry specifically because they don't think like me. They are not there to solve the challenge for you. That is an unrealistic expectation. They are there to say something, to ask a silly question that you're too embarrassed to ask in front of your peers, to throw out an audacious idea ungoverned by your constraints. Again, they won't solve the challenge for you, but they will say something to get you out of your river of thinking. We were designing a new retail dining and entertainment complex for Hong Kong Disneyland. We had in the room 12 white male American architects, and I gave them the following challenge that I'm going to give to you. But I also brought in as my naive expert a young Chinese female chef, because she was the antithesis of everybody else in the room. So I'm going to look away. I'm going to look at the theme park, And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you 7 seconds to draw an object. Tell me when you're ready, and I'll name the object.
Ready?
7 seconds to draw a house. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pens down. Now, without me turning without me turning around, I'm going to guess that both of your houses are identical. I'm going to guess that you put a door in the middle at the front. You've drawn 2 windows. You probably put bars over. And the shape of your roof is, in fact, a triangle. So now I'm going to turn around.
It's a triangle.
Shocker. So here's what happened. You both just went into your river of thinking of what a house looks like. And so all the architects drew exactly what you drew because they stayed in their river of thinking. The young Chinese chef drew a dim sum room made out of dim sum, that round bamboo dish that your dim sum will come in, and a little Chinese lady waving out of the window. We all laughed because all of our pictures look the same except hers. She gave us permission to get out of our river of thinking and think differently and consider audacious architecture. If any company in the world could consider audacious architecture, it'd be the Walt Disney Company. But on the way out the door, somebody slapped a post-it note over her drawing, which simply said, distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese. 7 years later, the strategic brand position for the Shanghai Disney Resort became distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese. Most companies simply don't realize the power of diversity.
Should we have some fun? I think we should take Duncan outside. I think we've been inside of 2 rooms. Let's actually step out and get some fresh air, or some virtual fresh air.
Right. Okay.
So should we go to our rooftop bar?
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah?
Perfectly
Welcome.
suited for a Friday night.
Down. Go back on.
Really excited to ask you because I have a lot of respect for you in terms of how you seem to have dedicated your life to kind of studying human behavior and really looking at, as I said, people beyond the job title, looking at the person first and foremost. So, as someone who's basically, spent their entire career, focused on tapping into how people think, we really want to know, what do you think now with the global pandemic? How is that going to impact, the behaviors of the consumer?
I think what probably started here, it's the acceleration of the virtual world. We were moving virtual anyway, but we were all a little clunky, we're all a little clumsy, and we stayed in our river of thinking of what a meeting could look like. I, at Disney, wouldn't do virtual brainstorms because the people weren't in the room with me. And it never really worked. And I always said we couldn't do a virtual brainstorm. Well, I've just been proved wrong. Look, you've got carbon emissions and global warming. And so the days of all just traveling somewhere for a 1-hour meeting or a 1-hour presentation is not the responsible thing to do. It's also not the financially responsible thing to do. But what we're seeing now is truly incredible. But I think the pandemic, and we've seen that the demand for virtual is going to accelerate incredibly fast. I mean, I will be coming back to you next week and asking you, can we do a brainstorm?
So, what we can end on is maybe playing a little bit of basketball, if you're up for it.
Okay. All right, here you go.
Yep.
Oh.
Yes! Yay! Woo! We do a dance. Did it. Dance.
Oh, fist bump.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey! Duncan has christened the Real Place podcast by gracing us with his presence, but what he's going to do is something quite cool. Rather than us trying to find the next guest, we're going to ask you to hand over the baton and think of someone or nominate somebody that you think would be perfect to join us on this podcast.
This is an easy one. I would nominate Sir Ken Robinson. He is, I think, the most viewed TED Talk of all time, and he talks about how education is killing creativity. And yet, as I talked earlier on, oops, hang on. I was going to give him a nice smile there. Look, there we go. He, like me, believes creativity will be one of the most employable skill sets in the next decade, and is an incredibly articulate and engaging speaker. So I would nominate Sir Ken Robinson.
Wow. That was amazing.